Hello, welcome to another fabulous episode of Touch My Clock, where we'll be talking about the Dirty Dozen, so pay attention, you lot. Now then, before we start, time I think for a little wrist check.
Hi guys, this is Max from TMC. So we just came back from Hands on Horology and we had a really good chat with the Ball Watch Company. Now, not a lot of people talk about Ball, but they've actually done some really interesting things, and this recent piece we thought was really relevant to the episode.
One of the watches that caught our eye was the Ball Dazzle. Ball, very interesting company, started 1890 in Connecticut, I believe, USA, and then went to Switzerland just like Rolex, Graham and everybody else. Known for their association with railways and their master engineer. It's a pretty incredible watch, and my word does it dazzle. First thoughts, probably easier to read and more legible than I had originally imagined. I love the little light blue ends to both the second, hour and minute hand.
What they try to do is keep something in the roots of Balls and what they were doing in all the engineering stuff for the railways and everything, and getting something British. So what they did is this Dazzle. It's just this camouflage they used to use in World War One. You can see it in the central London actually on HMS Belfast, and the whole point of it is to have all these triangle shapes of grey, white and black painted on a ship, so you wouldn't be able to know how far it is in the distance. So that was helping them during the war. So you can see they have that kind of design on the dial, which is really cool. They got a gas cylinder luminescence. It's got 5,000 Gs of resistance, so quite shock resistant watch. COSC certified. I think it looks pretty cool.
Time, I think, for a little wrist check. Max.
Hi. Today I'm wearing...
Today, yeah, all right.
I had another watch on and I put this one on because it made more sense for the episode. Today, or for the last 2 minutes, I've been wearing the Kue watch. It's the closest thing I have to a military or field-looking watch. And yeah, you might argue that the Japanese weren't particularly our friends during the war, so it doesn't really make sense for a Dirty Dozen episode, but it's important to see all sides of the story. We don't endorse war, by the way.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely.
All war is bad and awful. We're just having a little bit of fun around the history of military watches.
There we go. Bad intro.
So on that basis of having fun, wrist check coordinated in 3, in 2, in 1, and action! It is indeed the MIPS Field Watch,
PIS 29.
as commissioned by the British Army during the 60s. Now, unfortunately, the only service this ever saw was during the Troubles, and we certainly don't want to be talking about that one now on this episode for sure. This is a really cool watch because it's got a Swiss hand-round Salita movement. It's the original design.
Salita.
Okay. The original design. Swiss ETA, sorry. But a Swiss movement, a stainless steel. It's got a very, very high specification and incredible value for money. If you can buy one, Time Factor's bought Smith's the brand.
If you can.
And you've got literally about a minute every other Sunday to try and buy the watches and have a limited supply. But this is absolutely a stunning watch for the price. I think it was around...
I will talk about after what goes in the mic.
Very, very good value and very cool. And the original design that was issued to the British Army.
Was there a 2-for-1 discount?
What?
No, but we were both sitting there at 1 minute to 12, refreshing the scheme. I think we bought two of the watches
in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Wow. Impressive.
So I think in terms of a value buy, in terms of value for money, that's
Very good. We'll talk about it after, but yeah.
right. Now, pay attention, you lot. What I need you to do now is shoulders back. You there, stop slouching on your sofa. You behind the laptop. Shoulders back, chest in. Now, first thing you need to do is to
Like.
and to
Subscribe.
and make sure you write lots of good comments. What? So, Dirty Dozen watches. They were actually a set of 12 military wristwatches made by Swiss, actually manufacturers during World War II, designed to, commissioned by the Ministry of Defence, and designed to be perfect for the needs of the soldiers in the field. And of course, previous to that, soldiers were wearing field watches. Originally, pocket watches, the old trench watches, pocket watches that they're therefore just strapped to their wrist, and then the whole element of field watches came in. And then post the field watches, these ones came in. Now, it also came from that fabulous film, The Dirty Dozen, that appeared in the 60s, and that wonderful film of those great soldiers doing some really naughty things and robbing banks and stuff like that. Now, what's interesting is there's a lot of debate and talk around the Dirty Dozen because you thought of them actually playing a serious part in the war, but actually only turned up, most of them, between now and 1944. However, one can claim that was the victorious leg when we won and showed the Bosch who's boss, what. So maybe they played a small part in the war, but they may have played a part in the end of the war, and certainly you saw some active action.
Something
which I think is really, really quite interesting. But they have become collector pieces, and some of those pieces now really have gone up to...
Free. Yeah.
Really have gone up to
I can't do shorts.
20
Much information.
20 or 30,000 pounds for a single watch. They have become real collector's items. So I think it's really, really fascinating in terms of that whole world of collecting, military watches and 30 dozen watches, which is really cool.
How am I supposed to do shorts of this? This is impossible. You talk way too fast.
That is true. When we do the shorts, Eliot tries to get a 10-second segment. It's impossible.
This guy.
But this could be a short, us complaining.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
They were commissioned by the Ministry of Defence to be reliable and useful in the sources for active duty.
Isn't that any watch, really?
So why, I don't know the answer to this, but why did they reach out to non-British brands? Was it just any brand commissioned for the MOD, I guess? Because they have Omega, which is Swiss,
That's right.
Longines, which is Swiss, and then obviously they've got Vertex, which is English, IWC, which is English. Was it just any supplier would do?
No, they chose, these were the 12, these were the original 12, which we'll list now. Here we are. Now pay attention, let's list the 12 original Dirty Dozen watches.
Buren, Longines, Eterna, Grana, Jaeger-LeCoultre, Lemania, Sima, Omega, IWC, Timor, Record, Vertex.
There we go.
Very professional. And there's no Smiths. Oh well.
There's Miss came out in the 60s.
No, it didn't.
It did indeed. Yeah, in 1967 to 1970,
Oh, well, that's easy.
which didn't really see much active service, I'm afraid, except for a few elements in Ireland. So, I think, Max, let's look at some of the specifications of these watches, and we're really interested to see the whole element of the watches that were used by those Dirty Dozen, and some of the American models.
No, definitely. So I think what's important to understand with the word specification is that the specification for watches is what they need, so the watch suppliers need to conform with for it to make sense for battle purposes. So that generally always has to do with durability and legibility, so a mix of both. So on these examples, what you can see is you get a railroad track that goes all around. There needed to be luminous plot markers all around the dial. They thought that a sub-seconds was way better than a centiseconds hand. There had to be a high contrast, so they had black with white on the front. They had a form of non-breakable glass that they had to have a bit part of this, so they were looking at perspex glass because obviously they needed that resistance. And as you can see, they were all
NATO straps.
They were all designed to be NATO worn. Although
Now, if you had a watch that's got the normal straps, and one of those breaks, you lose the watch. Well, the good news about NATO strap, if one of those pinned breaks, it still holds on, and you still manage to keep your watch. So I think that was one of the reasons for bringing it in.
Attached in 2 points instead.
yeah. So if you buy one of them today, the reality is you're probably not actually getting an original. So even when they get sent to auction, because they've got radioactive matter within the loom plots, those are usually replaced. So there is a bit of you need to know what you're buying before you're actually buying, and they're becoming more and more rare. I'm sure you guys are going to talk about it, but these pieces, especially from the suppliers that provided very little quantities, are so much rarer. So Grana, I believe, is much rarer than Jaeger-LeCoultre,
20 grand, I think.
just because there's a lot less that's in the market.
Yeah, you easily go 20-30k on a lot of these Dirty Dozen original watches in auction.
That's crazy. So very quickly, how do we, the British, differ from other countries during the war? So I was telling you how the Americans also had their own specification. So the Americans followed A11 specification instead of WWW, which was waterproof watch wristlet. And they believed that actually having centiseconds made more sense than sub-seconds. The Germans went completely the other way, where all of these watches were quite small, so 32 mil, 37 mil, which is coming obviously back into fashion. And what the Germans did was they had massive 47 millimeter, 55 millimeter watches. They tended to be more for the pilots. They had subtypes of the B-UHR, which was their Dirty Dozen production, basically. But
The UR is just watch in general.
Oh, I didn't know that. So within the B-UHR, you have the B-UHR and the B-UHR, or however,
type B and type A.
type B and type A. But essentially, one of them is cleaner, and the other one has a center track that showcases your hours and then the minutes on the outside. And the last one that was interesting that I found had to do with a brand called Seiko Sha. Can anyone guess what the name of Seiko Sha is today?
Is it Seiko? Seiko?
Nah, it's IWC, mate. No, it's Seiko. And Seiko had a really interesting one. So those were called the Kamikaze watch, or the official name was Tensoku. And what those watches had, interestingly enough, were inner rotating bezels. So these watches had inner rotating bezels to, again, it was basically a mix between some of the elegance you would have in a typical wristwatch with you've got cathedral hands and you've got Breguet numerals, but then it also had the chunkiness and the functionality that you would find with the B-UHR watches. So it's interesting how every country wanted the same thing or somewhat the same thing, and yet they ended up with somewhat completely different ways of designing them.
You could see one thing about the pilot watches that we remember is that because they're for pilots, they're going to have an onion crown. So generally the crown is much larger, so the pilots can change the time with their gloves.
And do you know, in terms of graphic design, why everyone has that symbol?
So they know where the top of the dial is.
Not only. This was actually a piece of British heraldry that just got appropriated by the MOD at some point. I feel like you know what this is.
Okay, he agrees.
Oh, consider. What this is it's a broad arrow. So it's a broad arrow, the end of the arrow, and so this got graphic design into a much simpler logo, and so you'll find them on the front and the back of the pieces.
But it's really interesting because you would only find that, and actually you're only allowed to have that on those Dirty Dozen watches, and you had to have the ministry permission to be able to stick that on. So when you're looking at old watches and you can look at that, you see that little arrow on there, you know that's one of the original watches.
Very cool.
Not on here. Well, there is actually.
There is indeed.
Because on the bottom.
At the bottom, that's it there, because that was the actual dial of the 60s.
Something interesting about your watch here, my watch, if you can see there's a small L with a circle, that's because it's normal luminova. And before it had a different letter because it was whatever the material they were using.
So L is for non-luminova?
For non-radioactive.
Wouldn't it be the opposite?
So lithium. No, now I'm can't remember. Okay, cut that.
Which will appear just here in the correct translation. But it wasn't the...
well, I'll send it to you later.
It's for ligma.
Certainly not radioactive. Now that comes on to a good thing. So actually, although there's a lot of collectors of those original Dirty Dozen watches that have continued to go up in value, there's a huge number of, I wouldn't say homage, but a huge number of modern takes of those particular watches that are really trending. There's quite a few numbers of doing.
I mean, you have a lot of brands that are remaking their old models. So even, for example, Smiths, so they used to have their own watch, now saying from the 60s or so. So this is just an updated version of it. But there are a couple of brands, so I just wanted to show. So first of all, you've got Vertex. So Vertex made these Dirty Dozens again in the 40s, so in 44, and this is the M36. So this again is a re-edition of what they made, SW260, but this is just above £2,000. Just above £2,000. Okay, now bear with me for the next one. Timor as well, one of the original 12s. Same thing, re-edition. So this is the Heritage Field of what they made. SW260 again, £976. Okay, and now you have the Smiths BR26 or 29A. And this has a 2801 manual wind ETA for £400.
Arguably better,
so
I would say. Well, it gets into a bit of detail, but
yeah, because of course every brand will do their own thing with the materials for the case, for the movement. For example, even the Vertex, it's Silita, but it's an elaborate version, so it has more work to it. But you know, it's what's really nice about it is that if you go online, there's a big range of prices of what you can get. And if you want to get your hands on a Dirty Dozen, which I think, for example, even the Smiths, is probably the best first watch you could possibly get. You get something mechanical, great ETA movement, £400, which is really affordable, and it's a great classic design that you can wear anywhere.
With a lot of heritage, a lot of history, and Timor are very well known. But I think then, in fairness, in the range, Vertex have got some really, really gorgeous dials. And they've got some bronze cases, they've got reds and blues, and they've got some really, really nice and pretty dials. So they have done a really good job on bringing that alive, and been really, really true.
One I really like,
really
is
true
their-
to the original, really true to the original watch designs.
What I really like is their mono pusher that they have.
Yes.
I saw it at the British Watchmaking event. Got a picture here, but it is really nice.
I think I see what you mean though. There's a balance to strike, because on the one side, I think it's a bit shit that you're paying twice, 3, 4, 5 times as much for a watch that is in essence supposed to be the most functional, basic,
Affordable watch, yeah.
affordable, just hit the spec and you can go through it, right? A part of me goes, if I want to buy a watch like that, then I want to go with your Smiths.
Yeah.
And then the other side goes, okay, let's say I'm building up a collection and I'm only allowed 6 watches in my collection, and I want 1 field watch, 1 military watch, and money is no expense. I'd go Vertex.
Yeah.
Just to get that slightly higher specification, slightly better, slightly, oh, that's cute, you've got this, well, I've got this. I think it depends how you feel about this type of watch. If a field watch, you consider this as every other watch, then you want the best spec, then great. If you consider it like a G-Shock tied beta watch, then I would go with Smiths.
Broad arrow.
Pretty cool, huh?
Oh, this is just a random thing. This is a pouch by Stevio Straps, which is really cool. And it's got the
Stevio, so fabulous.
He's got the broad arrow there. Well, this is just another watch. This from Gas Bones, actually. So I just brought this out as another example of, if you want to get this military essence, there is a lot out there and a lot that is affordable.
And field watches are really useful day to day. I find them really easy to read, very, very good practical watches. Now, boys, what do you think the British Army are wearing today?
Omega. Citizen.
CWC?
Very, very good observations. Very, very clever logic behind it, but you're wrong. Which watches in your collections have you got that's fairly robust, indestructible?
Casio.
No, it's going to be...
Indeed, it's the Casio G-Shock. I believe they use a Mudmaster, and the specification will appear here.
Because he doesn't know.
It's a lot of letters and a lot of numbers. I don't know exactly by heart, but I think it's called a Mudmaster, and it's got a digital compass and lots of other really good stuff in there. But actually, the camouflage and the colours match the attire, so it looks like very smart. But that's what the British Army are using today.
There you go.
Would you feel comfortable with, let's say, the Tensoku, the kamikaze watch, wearing it out in public? Would it make no difference to you? Does it matter? Because I think this is where it gets interesting. War is a sensitive topic.
Yeah.
We're not promoting war. We're not saying
Absolutely
war is
not.
good. It's just certain innovations and certain designs come out of war.
It's not called a kamikaze watch, is it?
The nickname is.
Oh, the nickname. Okay, well, it's just a...
The other
It's a
nickname
Japanese pipe.
is.
Okay, we're demonetized again. No, I think it's just a Japanese pilot's watch. We'll just leave it at that. So yes, I would wear it.
Yeah. I mean, if you can retrieve a kamikaze watch, you're not a very good pilot.
We're gonna get fired.
There we go.
Fabulous. Well done. That was hugely entertaining. Now remember, very, very important, make watches, not war. Okay.
Very inspirational.
Remember to
Like.
and to
Subscribe.
leave lots of comments. Lovely to see you. Tally-ho.
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 And then in the background, I'll play It's a Long Way to
Tipperary. It's a long way to go.
It's a long
A long way to Tipperary, to the sweetest girl I know. Goodbye, Piccadilly, farewell, Leicester Square. It's a long, long way to Tipperary.